was glad when they said, come let us go to the house of the Lord. I was glad when they say, come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls.
Welcome to the Church with No Walls podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dearbone, and this week I have a special treat. So anybody who knows me knows that I am a huge wrestling fan, and obviously I am serious about my faith as well. So I get to combine two of my favorite things in the form of an interview with Jody Powell, who is a wrestling commentator. So Jody, welcome to the podcast, first of all.
Hey, Ryan, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about our conversation.
Glad to have you on here. So in this season, we've talked more about outreach ministries and ministries that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of. When we talk about the church, we think of usually the four walls. We think of four walls of church, and usually a lot of spirituality happens within those four walls. So we've looked this season about how can you find salvation? How can you be brought to God? How can the message get out outside of those four walls? And so we're talking about moving out of the four walls of the church into the four-sided walls, four-sided ring, the wrestling ring. And Jody, so let's just start off a little bit with what kind of set the scene for it. So Jody, when we think of wrestling, we think, and we talked about this off air last week, we think about Hulk Hogan, we think The Rock, we think Attitude Era for many of us, where it's a lot of sex and violence and a lot of other things. So when you think of wrestling, you don't necessarily see that as being something that's hand in hand with religion. So
Right.
Jody, talk a little bit about your experience with wrestling and how that does actually connect with and go hand in hand with religion.
Well, sure. Yeah, it really does. And wrestling provides us with an opportunity to explore, the old good versus evil battle. And, I've been a wrestling fan since I was 5 years old. So I'm back in the old school days of good guys and bad guys. And, the curtain hasn't been pulled back yet. And so, it's a shock to see the good guy and the bad guy in the same car together. And they're not supposed to like each other. What are they doing? And so, we've kind of gone back to a traditional wrestling format with our organization at Wrestling for Christ. It's a little more old school. It's not necessarily, the Attitude Era. That's one way of doing wrestling. It's the way the WWF or WWE now decided to go. But, we have great professional wrestlers who have worked for WCW or WWF at some points. And we come together and we create the same kind of drama, the same kind of storylines. Our good guys are good guys. Our bad guys are bad guys. The difference is that we share the gospel, and we do that at every show. We'll have an intermission. A pastor will come, or one of our guys will share their testimony. Just a lot of really good Christian men. The show is the show. I mean, it's wrestling, but at the same time, it's not the sex. It's not the innuendo. It's not the language. Our guys aren't doing, low blows or anything like that. That could just be something that's damaging to any of our testimonies. And so it's just good family fun. I always tell people you can bring your 9-year-old niece or your 82-year-old grandmother to our show, and neither of them will see anything that they shouldn't see.
And I think I like the way you framed it. The wrestling is the wrestling. So you're not walking away from what wrestling is. There's going to be some physicality. There's going to be some level of violence or athleticism, but it's not based in what we tend to see. So when somebody does come to a show, they're expecting to see the more crass type of wrestling. How do you show them, hey, you can do it without that stuff and still be able to have an entertaining show and still be able to spread the word of God?
Yeah, it's really in how you put the show together and the things that you want to spread and say, and the spots that you do in the matches. It really depends on everyone that's booking the show. It depends on the talent. Everyone coming together and understanding. Okay, number one, we're not going to go out there in just wrestling trunks. All of our guys wear their shirts when they're wrestling. We don't need to see any scantily clad individuals, whether male or female. We don't do female wrestling. It's not because we don't think that females can't wrestle. It's just something we've chosen not to do. And so our guys come in and we write the stories where the good guys are the good guys, the bad guys are cheating to win. You know, they'll come out and they'll interact with the crowd and tell people, you know, they'll jaw back and forth, and it's all in good fun. But what we try to make sure we understand, and the really the image that we project is, number one, you don't have to say cuss words to get over with a crowd. You don't have to do these things, these shocking things. You see it online too. Some of these wrestling leagues that are hitting people with light bulbs and putting people through glass table. You don't have to do all of that to tell a really good story. And that's what we wanted to get back to, is the basics of wrestling, telling the story in the ring. And people say, it's violence. How do you say it's something that you can share the gospel with when there's violence involved? And it is. But it's also entertainment. We know that it's scripted. And so, what we try to do is we put together an entertaining show, and then we also share the gospel. And you can always invite someone to church, and I believe you should, and invite everyone that you know in your life that is lost to come to church. A lot of times the answer I get is, that's not really my thing. I don't know that I really want to go. Invite them to a wrestling show, and they're like, oh yeah, let's go. And then they get to hear the gospel. They get to hear the gospel presented to them in an environment where they're comfortable. And then everything that we do, it goes towards our mission trips as well. We're all about missions, both at home, and then also our hearts are in the Philippines, with the people of the Philippines. And we go on mission trips every year. We take our guys over there. We do wrestling shows. We do youth camps. We do vacation Bible schools. Anything we can do to help our sister churches in the Philippines spread the gospel. And they love the wrestling shows. Some of our biggest crowds are in the Philippines. But at the same time, wrestling is the tool. Wrestling is the vessel for which we choose to share the gospel. Some people preach, some people sing, we wrestle.
And I definitely want to come back to the Philippines and your work over there. You said something that really struck me. You said that obviously you don't have to do all these certain things in order to get a crowd. So when it is time to spread the gospel, how do you go about it? Is there a certain, you said during the intermission, does somebody come out and give a testimony? How do you weave that into a show?
Yeah, so typically we'll do the intermission. Myself as commentator and ring announcer, I'll come out and kind of prep the crowd for what's coming, and and kind of give them the rundown of the agenda. We always have a speaker prepared, whether it's and usually it's a pastor from a local church, or the church shows that we do. Usually the pastor there will want to speak to their congregation that's come to see the show. But if it's at a fair, sometimes, I'll share my testimony, or one of our guys will share about the Philippines and about what they experience on mission trips. But it's always a time to just kind of take a breath, take a break, and let's be really in the moment and let the Spirit move. We always pray before we start. We always pray with the pastor before, or the speaker, or whoever's speaking. We always pray for them before they come and give their testimony, or before they bring the word, because it's just, prayer so important. It's so powerful. It's the way that I think we tap into being a vessel for God and allowing Him to speak through us through the Holy Spirit. And the crowds love it. We ask everybody, we shut concessions down. We stop concessions. We ask our guys not to be out in the crowd. We want everybody focused on who's speaking and who's sharing their testimony, because it's a very vulnerable and reverent thing.
And so let's shift over back to the mission trips to the Philippines. So where did that come about, and how did that transition into what you all are doing now?
Well, our founder, Richie Scruggs, who's known in the wrestling world as the American GI, just a wonderful wrestler. He was pretty popular back in 80s, 90s. I think he's popular now. He's a cool guy. Richie, he's wrestled with some of the greats up and down the road. He had a big stint with the Koloffs back in the NWA territories. He's wrestled. He was brought in and trained by Manny Fernandez. Just a lot of big names. But Richie has always had a heart for missions. He started going to the Philippines in early 2004, I believe, just on his own, just as part of his own calling to go to the Philippines. Then as time progressed and he kind of started booking and promoting shows, he put together Wrestling for Christ with the sole purpose of being a 501c3, a nonprofit that drives funds completely 100% for missions work. Most of that being with mission trips in the Philippines. They went over for the first time in 2019, I believe. And in that short amount of time since going over with Wrestling for Christ, that we've seen over 5,000 professions of faith just in the Philippines. They're hungry for the word. They want to hear. And we're not talking about going into Manila where it's the big city and it's a first world environment. We go into the villages. We go into areas of the Philippines. In fact, Richie tells the story. He asked one of the pastors of the church, what's behind your church here? What's back in the woods? And they said, we don't know. We don't go back there. And so, it's in the remote areas of the Philippines. And when we go, it's just an opportunity to serve. And that's what it comes down to. Yes, they love the shows and we put on wrestling shows, but it's really an opportunity to serve. We had a couple that went last year. And, the young lady that went is really good. She's a great beautician. She's great with hair. She set up a chair in the middle of the village, broke out her tools, her scissors and whatnot. She started giving haircuts for free. And there were indigenous people that were coming out of the jungle to get their haircut, probably for the first time. And she had an interpreter with her, but she had the opportunity to sit there and talk with every single person and share the gospel while she was cutting their hair. That's what you do. You take the word and you go to where people are. And that's why I love the concept of what you're doing here. It is church without walls. We go out and we wrestle, we put on shows, we spread the gospel, all for the point of missions, to be able to go and spread the word in areas of the world where they don't have access to the word of God like we do.
And so now, for you being a part of this, being able to see this live in action and not just hearing about it, how has that changed you? How has that affected your faith, being able to be a part of this?
It's so inspiring, and it's allowed my walk to grow tremendously. Every time that I'm afforded the opportunity to share at one of our shows, and I've done it many times, but I'm always amazed at what God does, and it always catches me off guard a little bit. I remember one show, it was this time last year maybe. I was speaking at that show and shared a message about my marriage and just what marriage should be, and how we should never stop pursuing our wives, and really from a man's perspective, the kind of husband that we should be. And spoke for maybe 10 minutes. Had a great altar call at that. And then afterwards, during intermission, a young man came up to me and he said, I just want you to know that I just came down from Charlotte, North Carolina, and which was probably about 30 minutes from the venue. And he said, I had to get out of there because I was in the hospital. My wife has stage 4 cancer. She's in some of the final stages, and I needed a break. And I saw this ad on Facebook for this event, and I came down just to have a mental break. And I was in a bad place. I just didn't understand why this was happening. And now I see why God wanted me to come here. And I mean, honestly, Ryan, it was just like tears. I couldn't stop it because I had no vision of being used in that way. And just knowing that God was able to use me and speak through me was humbling, because I didn't think I was worthy. I don't think I'm worthy of that. But God just has an amazing way of using us in a way that not only blesses the person that's hearing it, but it blesses, that blessed me more than just about anything that entire year. Just hearing that one person share their heart with me about what was going on. And we prayed for his wife, and we probably went a little long in intermission that night. and that was okay because we needed to, be about the Lord's work. And I've prayed for that. I don't even know his name. I don't know, where he is or the outcome of the situation, but I pray for him very often because God just lays people on our hearts, and we're obligated to pray for them.
And then how often do you all travel? Obviously, a lot of wrestling promotions move and they travel. How often do you travel? Where are some of the places that you travel to?
Yeah, so we're based out of Kings Mountain, North Carolina, but we've been all over the Southeast. We love to do church shows. We love to do fairs. Fairs are great shows. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we were at a county fair, had 2 nights at a county fair, and they're great for a couple of reasons. One, and the main reason is you're just exposed to a lot of different people. And so there's a great opportunity there to share the gospel. They've come out, they've come to see the entertainment, and now they're getting fed the word. And two, fairs are great for raising funds for our missions. And so we love to go to county fairs. We were at a youth event, and I believe we're going back this year. It was in Ringgold, Georgia. And it was in a high school gym with about 800 middle schoolers. So the noise level in that gym was off the charts. The squealing and the screaming, and that just feeds the energy. It feeds our guys. They get the adrenaline going and put on a really good show. And again, we were able to tie into their theme for their youth event. It was it was probably 11 or 12 churches that came together that brought all of their youth to this one retreat. And so we were able to tie into their theme, share a message that they've heard all weekend. And so we were able to reinforce that. So we love to go to those kind of shows. We love to do church shows, fundraisers for the churches as well. And then the fairs. And then, we do shows based out of Kings Mountain on a regular basis as well.
You also have been on television as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were on Abundant Television, which, by the way, Abundant Television is a wonderful Christian streaming network. You can find it on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. It's a free channel, and they have Christian programming 24/7. And they wanted wrestling, and we were able to provide them that for about a year. They have another great organization out of Texas now called Ephesians Pro Wrestling that does a lot of the same things that we do. I have a show on Monday nights at 7 o'clock called Falls Count Anywhere. We talk about wrestling, what's going on with the WWE, what's going on with some of the independents. And then at the end of the show, we have a segment called Finding Tomorrow where we just share about, just really a Christian struggle living in a broken world. And we pick a topic and we just kind of talk about it, and we share the word and dive into the Bible a little bit. It started out as kind of a men's mental health, and now it's kind of evolved into, it's just Christian mental health. And that is absolutely the favorite part of our show. Myself and my friend Mike Buchanan out of Phoenix host that show. And so, yeah, it was just another great opportunity to spread the message and to really utilize the thing that we love in professional wrestling in a way that glorifies God. And I know it sounds counterintuitive because a lot of people think professional wrestling, they think Vince McMahon, they think, all this what I call garbage. I'm very critical of any kind of wrestling that has to use some of these, just real flesh-driven tactics to try to get over. You don't have to do that. And we deal with all kind of wrestlers on the independent scene, some Christians, some not. We don't limit guys working with us that have to be Christian. In fact, we love having guys that come in that have questions. They need to hear the message as well. And so, but they also have to abide by our standards and make sure they're not saying things they shouldn't say. And it's funny. It's a lot of fun to work with some of these guys and say, did you know you can do a great promo without saying a single cuss word? And, driving home your point, even if it's just talking junk about your opponent, you don't have to cuss. It's not necessary. In fact, some of the greats do it without doing that. It's kind of it's what I call a cheap. It's what's called in wrestling a cheap pop. It's a cheap way to get a crowd reaction. And so we just, we like to shepherd young men that are questioning, that have questions about faith and really aren't sure. And so I personally love working with wrestlers that are not necessarily believers yet. And so I think it's another way to minister and a great way to spread the word of God.
And you touched on especially with men, because wrestling in a large basis of the audience are men, and men are always taught to be strong, show no emotion, to do a lot of these wrestling characters we see are those types of stereotypes that men are supposed to be. Take what you want, take no prisoners, all those things. So in a lot of ways, kind of like you said earlier, wrestling is a microcosm of what we see in good versus evil. Some of the Ten Commandments, seven deadly sins. We see those play out in a wrestling ring. So, how do you think when the audience gets to see some of these things played out? You see, especially a man seeing these things, these stereotypes being shown to him in the form of in a wrestling match or a promo. Do you think it hits differently because I'm seeing it, but then I'm also hearing some words, some scripture, some testimony, and now they kind of intersect in a different way?
I think so. We always try to use, as we're coming up with storylines and angles, we always try to tie it back to that good versus evil. And how do you overcome and what are the challenges that you face? And yeah, it's difficult because we are stereotyped as men, and it's our own fault. I call the disease suffering in silence. And that's what we do as men. We don't open up, we don't share. Who do you talk to? Who do you go to when you need to talk? I don't talk to anybody. And so we hold it inside. And people will ask, how are you doing? And we'll say, oh, I'm fine. We're not fine. And so, this wrestling for Christ, using these storylines, using the gospel, giving people an opportunity to interact with us. We're very interactive with our fans. This gives us an opportunity to show that you don't have to be that. We aren't alone. And, while I think across America, men are more likely to watch wrestling than women, you'd be surprised at our audience and who's really getting into it. There are a lot of women that come, bring their husbands, bring their kids, whatever, and they're vocal, they're loud, they're all about the drama as well. And I love that because it gives us an opportunity again to reinforce what godly men should be, how godly men should talk, and share the gospel of the Lord.
And now, kind of moving more into the wrestling realm of it. What got you into wrestling? What got you as a fan, and then got you into working with wrestling promotions?
Yeah, I was 5 years old when I started watching wrestling. I started watching wrestling with my grandmother. She was, back in the day, it was the old lady at ringside with the umbrella that thought everything was real. That was her. And, we would go to her house after church every Sunday, and wrestling would be on, and we'd sit down and we'd watch it. And I became a fan of Ric Flair's because she hated Ric Flair. And so it was just to antagonize, I just wanted to, just to antagonize her. And she got me watching it. I was hooked. And I was a fan for so long, Ryan. I mean, I haven't been, what they say, in the business very long, little over a year. And for the longest time, as a wrestling fan, and really just kind of a student of the business, because it's interesting when you find things that are interesting in your life. You like to do research, you like to know facts, you like to know things. And so I've done all that, and I thought, well, this, for the longest time, I just thought this is just useless knowledge. This is just for me. It's whatever. And God just kind of laughed and said, "Let me show you how you're going to use that." And so I was doing a lot of speaking. I do a lot of public speaking. I was doing a podcast as well. Had a wrestler on. He and I just kind of hit it off, and he said, "Oh, by the way, there's this great promotion that's not far from you that's interested in doing some television. Would you want to be a commentator?" And are you serious? Like, of course I would want to be a commentator. I've never done it before, but I would love to. And so I went and I met Richie and we hit it off. And before I knew it, I was doing ring announcing, I was doing commentary, I was doing video editing, all for the television show. And it just kind of grew from there. I've had opportunities to do other promotions, other Christian promotions, working behind the scenes, working on the mic, in commentary, in television, doing the television show Falls Count Anywhere every Monday night on Abundant has been just incredible. I love the podcast, but I love doing Falls Count because you just get to talk about what you love, and the two loves, really. I mean, I love professional wrestling. I love talking about the Lord.
And so I've done a little bit on behind the scenes of wrestling too. How different was it for you? I know for me, seeing some of the behind the curtains, it's interesting to see the world from what you see as a fan versus what you see on the backside. For you, how did you take it in when you saw? Okay, so see, these are some of the things that the casual fan doesn't know, or they don't
Yeah.
understand how this works. How's it been being on the other side of it?
It's actually made the experience of being a fan that much better, because now there are things that I understand why things happen or why people feel or think the way they think. Wrestling is a funny business, and and it's just like any other sport, and it is a sport because I've also been in the ring and I've trained with some of these guys, and for anyone that says that it's fake, it's not fake. It hurts. It hurts. You learn how to fall. Basically, people say, well, they know how to fall. They know how to not give themselves concussions. That's about it. It hurts. I've put together the wrestling ring 100,000 times now, it seems, and it's steel and it's 2x6 boards.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make that not hurt.
No.
But so I've been able to learn some things behind the scenes in terms of why people do things the way that they do in the ring, why things have to go certain ways. And it really, when you look at it, when you watch a match being constructed, put together, worked out, it is a beautiful, beautiful dance. It is an art form. And, these guys are doing things in the ring, number one, that are incredibly athletic, but number two, they're kind of doing them on the fly. They'll work out some major spots beforehand, but pretty much, especially the old school guys, they're calling it in the ring. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what the other's going to do until they're locked up and he says, okay, I'm going to give you an elbow. I'm going to whip you in the ropes and give you an elbow. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they do it, and they make it look just absolutely beautiful. And everything that goes from there tells a story in the ring. And so as a commentator, and what I've learned the most is that my job is not to relay what's happening on camera. My job is to relay why it's happening. Right. And because people can watch and they can see that somebody just took an elbow, or they can see that they're in an arm bar. But what does an arm bar feel like? What does it do? Why did they go to that wrestling hold? What's it supposed to do to the body? And why are they working on the arm? Why do they work on the left arm? Well, most people are right-handed, so they work on the left arm because that's your weaker arm. And so there's a story there to be told that goes beyond just what's happening in the ring. And so their job is to bring it to life in action. My job is to bring it to life in words. And a lot of times, neither one of us knows what the other's going to say or do. And so that makes it fun.
And people have always said it. And I mean, I grew up watching wrestling. I grew up watching soap operas. It is truly a soap opera with just a more high. It's live in person. You can actually go see it, almost like at the Coliseum. You could see the fighters engage. So it's a soap opera with the actual physicality. It like you said, it is a beautiful dance to watch, especially wrestlers who know what they're doing, who know how to work, to get together and to put it on, and just when they have, especially like when you have those matches where it's like, oh, he's got it, nope, and it's a 2 count, and no, oh no, he's got it, no, and then you see maybe somebody runs in or something unexpected happens. It can be like, I mean, literally, it can make your day. Just all the emotional roller coaster that you will go on with a good match that's told well by great storytellers, and then like you said with the commentary, you're fleshing it out for them. If there's a history between these two wrestlers, you're building that out. Why does this guy not like him? Why, like you said, going to the certain body parts? Maybe because last year when they fought, he he tore up his kneecap, so now he knows to go back to that kneecap that he
Yeah.
hurt last year. All these different pieces to it just it's so much more than just a piece for your eyes. It's for all of your senses.
Absolutely, and it's a great metaphor for life. I mean, life is a roller coaster ride, and things happen that you don't expect to happen, and we have to respond to those in the best way that we can. And so it's one of those things where it's full of drama, it's full of stories. We're there for the entertainment, we're there for the athleticism. And so when people get hooked into that, why not use that as a vessel to spread the gospel? And that's kind of the spin that Wrestling for Christ has really used professional wrestling for. I think in this world there are so many things that can be used. A perfect example is the internet or TikTok or social media. Inherently, those things are not evil. They're just things. What makes them evil or good are the people that use them. And so I look at wrestling the same way. Inherently, wrestling is not evil. It's a form of entertainment. It's how you portray that wrestling event. What is your goal? What is the message you're truly trying to communicate? Are you trying to communicate this? Oh, we're a hardcore style wrestling organization that loves to use chairs and have blood and cages and all this kind of stuff. That's a message. We choose to be a family-friendly, God-fearing, gospel-preaching wrestling promotion.
And I think that's awesome. And I think, to your point, you can wrestling sells a lot of things. If you look at WWE, AEW, TNA, they're selling products, they're selling
Yep.
merchandise, they're selling. If you look at the ring now, WWE has all these different sponsors
Yeah.
literally covering up the ring, so they're selling something. So with what you guys are doing with Wrestling for Christ, you're not selling, but you're giving the word. You're giving a platform for God and to talk about Him and to do it in a place that may not seem nearly as scary or as daunting as walking into a church, especially if you either never been in one or haven't been in one in a long time. You feel uncomfortable because maybe you're not dressed right, or you don't know anybody there. At a wrestling show, I mean, I went to WrestleMania 40
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
oh, it was amazing. Sat next to a woman who I'd never met before
Hmm.
for two straight nights. We became best friends. We were sitting up there cheering, wrestling talk. Saw her the day before the day I left to come back here to Kentucky. Me and her had a nice conversation, and she told me why she came. She told me that she grew up a wrestling fan, kind of moved out of it for a little while. She was working as a home health nurse.
Mm.
She saw Sami Zayn, and just his story and his struggle drew her back into wrestling. And
Yeah.
from there, she was like, well, I got to go see him wrestle. And so she made her way to WrestleMania just so she'd have the opportunity to see him. So sometimes it's a lot bigger than just what people casually see. There's something more to it. And if you can use it for, like you said, as a vessel to get
Mhm.
more people to engage and more people to even have the conversation about, hey, I heard something about God. I'd like to know a little more about Him at the
Yeah.
wrestling show.
Yeah.
Why else? Why would you not use it?
A lot of times, Ryan, honestly, a lot of the people that I interact with at some of our shows, God just puts it on my heart that this may be the only time they have an opportunity to hear the message. This may be their only time that they're open to hearing the message. And so yeah, why not? We've heard it. I've heard pushback on using professional churches shouldn't be grounds for entertainment venues and all this kind of stuff. And why not? I mean, this is an opportunity to reach people that need to be in your church, and along with the people that need to hear things that are in your church. And it's just because you're in church doesn't mean you necessarily don't need to be fed. but at the same time, there are just a lot of people that, like you said, that just aren't comfortable coming to a church building to hear a message because, of how they look or how they dress. Like you said, sometimes it's church trauma. Sometimes people have been before and have experienced something that have left them feeling a certain way. Well, that's church hurt. That's not God hurt. And so we use different pulpits to spread the same message.
And the fact that you said you have preachers, local preachers that come and they see the opportunity, they see that there's a message that needs to get out there, and just doing it in their church may not hit the person that needs to hear it the most. It may
Right.
or it
Yeah.
may not, but you have to
Yep.
go out everywhere and see where those people are at. And I think that's the fact that you have pastors and other preachers and those people spreading the gospel buying in and coming says that they see there's a need to reach out outside of those walls to get to those people.
I got to tell you about one pastor. His name is Michael Rice, and Pastor Rice is an amazing preacher. Midview Baptist Church in Kings Mountain. He gets it. He understands, and he loves wrestling. And so he loves it so much that he has been in matches with us and preached during the intermission. And it's fun because and he's not really a trained wrestler, and so we pair him with someone who is really experienced, who's been in wrestling for a long time. Shane Austin is a great wrestler. He's wrestled the Undertaker. He's been in WWE. He's been in WCW as well, and he knows how to take care of people that aren't as experienced. In fact, Shane has been the one that has trained me some. And so we paired Pastor Rice with Shane, and we put him over. He hit a leg drop off the second rope that was beautiful. and scooped him up, power slammed him, counted him 1, 2, 3. It was fantastic. And so yeah, there are preachers. Now, we don't expect all of our speakers to go to that length, but there are those that get it, that understand that there are people that need to be reached that aren't ever going to enter your walls on their own. And so, how do we reach them? We reach them through outreach. We reach them through other opportunities. Why not through wrestling? Why not through concerts? Why not through civic events? Why not through fairs? Why not through other things that go on in the community? Churches will not hesitate to have a tent at the local fair or wherever it is, and pay money to have a tent there. But for some reason, sometimes we get a little pushback on having a church show because they're afraid of what wrestling would bring. We don't bring that kind of wrestling. We bring good family fun. Everybody is decently dressed, speaks well. You can bring your kids to it. And all of our guys have the same, have shirts that they sell, and they're in the crowd, they're interacting, especially during intermission after the message. And we have a following. We have people that follow us and have become fans of some of our guys. So it really is a microcosm of what the larger wrestling world is, with the caveat that we don't stoop to levels of trying to gain more people through things that we would be ashamed to show our families.
And mentioning that made me think of WWE several years back. They did the story angle with DX going against Vince McMahon and God,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which was, I mean, and I will say, 'cause the pay-per-view was in Lexington, Kentucky, and I went to that show, not so much for the God angle. It was a WWE show, and I wanted to see it.
Right.
But I remember sitting in there in the arena thinking, man, I don't want him to come right now, because if he were to come right now, and I'm sitting in an arena where like the light is coming, and they had like his God's theme music. I was like, that's probably not, that to me is, looking back especially, that's sacrilegious, and that's not the way you want God introduced into wrestling or to be
Right.
spoken about in wrestling. But for views, for controversy, they went that route. And again, I went just as a fan, but looking
Mhm.
back at it now, I'm like, yeah, that probably that whole thing was probably, well, not probably, that whole thing was wrong, and that probably should not have been a place that I should have been just because of that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is that, like I said, it's something that it's all in how it's used.
Mhm.
And WWE decides to go different directions on a lot of different things, and I like to call them out for some things, but it's interesting sometimes. My buddy Mike and I, as we're on our show, we'll get into a little bit of debate because he gets so passionate about you can't believe that they went down this road or they said this or but my counter to that is why do we as Christians expect people who aren't Christians to act like Christians?
Mm.
And, it's not that it's okay, but it shouldn't be surprising to us that the lost are acting worldly because they don't have any direction. They don't have the direction of the Spirit. They don't have the direction of the Holy Word of God. So it really shouldn't be a surprise to us that people say things and do things that are counterintuitive to what we believe. And I think more importantly than how we think about it is how we respond to it. When people say things that are, and there are a lot of wrestlers that have had controversial statements and quite frankly have mocked those that believe. And you hear outrage from the Christian community. Where is the compassion? Where is the counterpoint? Where is the loving that comes from Christ in that? I just wonder. I don't like the term "what would Jesus do," just because I'd rather focus on what Jesus did.
Mm.
But at the same time, we know how Jesus responds, and he responds in love, and he responds in grace. A lot of times, I think Christians get it in their mind that, we take this attitude that person they shouldn't be considered with grace and with love. They're mean, they're vengeful, they're spiteful. God loves that person just as much as he loves me. And so why should I not be reflecting that love? And I think we get lost in that sometimes as Christians. We get a little too justified. We have some justice issues, I guess.
Yeah, and it's almost like some of those wrestling characters who perceive themselves to be different than they are.
Yeah.
That they're so much higher than everybody else, and that's why they deserve championships, or they deserve to be the top of the card because I'm this person and you are beneath me. And that's a lot of the wrestling characters. That's you get these characters where they're so much higher and mightier than anybody else,
Yeah.
but then they do the dirtiest things or they say the worst things. So I mean, if we're just talking about wrestling, is literally one of the basic stereotypical wrestling characters
Mhm.
who do the wrong things, but they have justified it for the right reasons in their
Yeah.
mind. And they're
Right.
no different. Actually, in a lot of cases, they're they need as much prayer as the person who they are looking down on and saying, "Oh, well, you're not on my level. You're not close to me."
Yeah, and the thing about wrestlers is that it's not just their characters who will say that. Some of them will say it behind closed doors in the locker rooms, like you need to be, I need to be in the main event, I need the belt, and all these kind of things. It's hard sometimes, I think, to find humility and be humble in a group of men because we allow our egos to get in the way. And we want to be seen as the best. We're driven to be the best. I think God gives us an innate drive to do the absolute best that we can because of the responsibilities that we have. We just have to keep in mind the humility part of that, in that if we're truly great, we don't have to tell anybody how great we are. And that's kind of the mindset that really wins over a locker room in a wrestling organization. It's that quiet strength that a person can have that commands leadership. And I think few people understand it. Few people get it, and those that do are the ones that come out as the locker room leaders. That do are the ones that come out really in some of the better positions of the wrestling card. And for us as Christians, what does that mean? That means that we need to, not that we are the ones that are great. We need to understand where our greatness comes from. What's the source of that? What's the source of that drive that we have, and what's the source of the talents that we've been given? And recognizing that that is not us, recognizing that it's not me, and that God has given us that is the humility that we need to show in order to continue to bless others and be blessed for it.
Absolutely. So let's dive for just a few minutes into some deep wrestling talk, a little bit of wrestling banter. And so if you are listening to the podcast and you want to continue on with us, we'll talk some wrestling. If not, we will circle it back around. But I always love talking wrestling with wrestling fans. So first of all, and then you mentioned Ric Flair earlier, and
Mhm.
growing up as being a fan of Ric Flair. Is he, if you had, and I know this is a cliche question, but your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, who would you put on yours? And you don't even have to give a reason why if you don't have one. But who are your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers?
Ric Flair is one. Um, for sure. Undertaker, I think, is one, and I'll tell you why. And a lot of people, I get a little pushback on Undertaker, and I tell you why, is because Undertaker recognized a point in his career where he needed to reinvent himself,
Hmm.
and when he came back as Biker Taker,
Hmm.
and I think that extended his career probably by about 5 to 7 years. I don't think he would have been as seen as much as a top guy had he not done that. He revolutionized the industry in that. One that I would put on the Mount Rushmore that I am not a fan of is Hulk Hogan. And the reason that I would put Hulk Hogan on well, the reason I'm not a fan of him because I never got into that. I never got into that character, the Hulkamania. I didn't get into it.
Hmm.
But the reason I would put him on the Mount Rushmore is how he changed wrestling, not once, but
Hmm.
twice.
Yeah.
He started that rockin' wrestling in the '80s. WrestleMania was that one thing that it was built around him.
Yeah.
And then he reinvented it again in the NWO. And so, I think about golf and what Tiger Woods did to golf. I mean, golf courses would change their golf course lengths just because of him. He changed the business.
Yeah. And I mean, literally, Hulk Hogan is, I mean, he was huge in two different decades.
Yeah,
80s, 90s. And I
yeah.
mean, even in the 2000s when he fought Rock and kind of came back around, I mean, most wrestlers only get a good decade or
Mhm.
so out of it. They don't get three three defining decades of their work.
Right, right. The fourth one, that's where the debate really starts. Love that. You know, you could name 10 guys that could be that fourth one. I would put Andre the Giant.
Mm,
I don't know how you don't. But it's a
yeah,
different era.
yeah,
It's just like
yeah.
talking NBA. Is it Kobe? Is it LeBron? Or is it Michael?
I
I
go
grew up with
Michael.
Michael,
Yeah, I
so
go
I'm a
Michael.
Jordan. I'm a Jordan guy.
Yeah, yeah,
My son is like Jordan. No, it's LeBron. Two different eras. How do you
yeah,
compare? It's really
yeah,
hard to.
yeah. I mean, if I'm looking at my Mount Rushmore, I think I think Taker has to be on it just because of I mean he is what I mean no matter what wrestling circles you look at, he lived his character. I
Hmm.
mean, he lived his character more so than anybody else. I mean, outside of Flair, but Flair's character, that's the character we all want to live. I mean, Undertaker literally being a person who doesn't talk, and literally every time you see him, he looks like that. That's a different level of commitment. So, and plus,
Yeah.
had amazing matches pretty much with almost everybody. He can make anybody look good. Um, I would say Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Hmm.
because I mean, at the height of his powers, nobody was hotter than him,
Yep.
and he was kind of that everyman that everybody. We talk about the masculinity factor. He was masculine. He would say what he thought. He did not care. So I would say he's up there. Uh, in terms of wrestling ability, man, I got to put Bret Hart on there,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
Bret Hart, it was a technician, a true technician in the ring. Uh, Literally another guy who could work with just about anybody and pull a great match out of them. And then just my personal favorite, my guy is The Rock. So,
The Rock. Yeah.
could work the mic, could work a match, just by far had all the charisma in the world, and it would seem like it was easy for him.
Yeah.
I'm like growing up. If I was like, if I could be somebody, if I could be like somebody, that's the guy I want to be like, because the way he moves around and carries himself, it's like, yeah, that's the guy I want to be. So I would say that's probably, if I had to put a Mount Rushmore together, that's probably my Mount Rushmore.
And I can't argue with any of that. I mean, I think Stone Cold, I think The Rock, I think Andre,
Mhm.
I think Bret Hart, I think Shawn Michaels, I think I'm not a Cena guy, but I mean, I
Yeah.
can't deny what he's done for the business, right?
Right.
That's where that fourth face on Mount Rushmore could be any 10 guys,
Yeah.
and I couldn't argue with any of that.
So how much do you watch wrestling now, like AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor, WWE? How much do you watch it now?
I watch mostly WWE. I have not watched enough AEW. I want to get into it. I was having this discussion this morning. AEW is one of those that are just, I feel like it's a little bit like WCW was about the time NWO was kind of tailing off, because
Yeah.
things just seem to be randomly thrown together. And maybe that's because I haven't watched it enough. I think Tony Khan is proving what Ted Turner learned, that having money doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And they're successful. I don't want to say that
Mhm.
they're not. They've done
Right.
some great things, but there are a lot of things that I think AEW could do to be truly a competitor of the WWE. I don't think they are that yet.
Yeah.
TNA, I think, has done a really smart thing in partnering with WWE and having the ability to share talent in that way. It was great to see Dolph Ziggler back in the WWE. It's
Yeah.
great to see Zack Ryder, although I wish both of them would not have come back in their WWE character. I'd rather them come
Right.
back who they are today.
Right.
But it was great to see. And TNA recognizes that they're not going to be WWE, so why not partner with them in a way that could be beneficial for both? And I think they've done that. And Ring of Honor has done that to a degree with AEW, I think. But again, I never really watched Ring of Honor, so it's hard for me to get into that. And then there's a lot of independents that I love to keep track of. That's a little harder because not all of them are on television. So there's a lot of YouTube watching, and I love to see different. I love to see some of the same guys going from promotion to promotion and doing some different things. And my independent wrestling, first of all, I think in 3 to 5 years, I think wrestling's going to look a lot different. I don't know that there will be a WWE. I don't know how long TKO hangs on to WWE because, quite frankly, they're losing money,
Yeah.
and they won't do that forever. And so, what do they do with it? I don't know, but I do think one thing that I believe will continue to grow and be strong is the independent wrestling scene. That's where ROH came from. I mean, they basically grew out of independence and kind of established themselves. Same with Ohio Valley. Same with a little bit of TNA, although TNA came in with a TV deal. I would say
Yeah.
they were a little more WCW than they were independent, kind of back in the day when Turner bought them. But I think wrestling is going to continue to be an incredible industry. But I just think it's going to be very different, especially now that WWE is part of TKO. And how long do they hang on to that? What are they going to do with it? Can they make it profitable? And I think all of that comes down to, are there people that really understand wrestling running the show?
Right.
And I know Triple H runs WWE, but what I mean is, I heard a TKO executive say, or read an article where he said, it's time for us to move past some of these Vince McMahon's PLEs like WrestleMania and SummerSlam. You can't do that.
No,
you can't do that. You're not going to reestablish. You're not going to recreate what WrestleMania was. Those things are far beyond Vince McMahon. You hear the saying all the time in sports. These are bigger than the game. These are bigger than the game. They're not that person's PLE. They are wrestling's PLE. And so, so those kind of decisions, those kind of questions, who's really running things, I think are going to be really important, especially for the future of WWE.
Oh yeah, and I think something like WrestleMania, that's non-negotiable because
it shouldn't be. It should be non-negotiable. There shouldn't be a question.
No, and even like a WrestleMania weekend circulating. So you got WrestleMania, which is pretty much the middle of everything. You got all these other like indie shows that are circulating around there. They're having their meet and greets. They're having smaller shows. So if you can't pay to get into WrestleMania, or you just want a different vibe, you're able to see these other shows. So something like that feeds all the other shows. Everybody has their own version of a WrestleMania. So it's not WWE WrestleMania, but they have their big kickoff show or their year show that everybody looks forward to. Like it's All Out for AEW, or it's this one for that one. And so that model, like you said, it's not just WWE's thing or Vince McMahon's or Triple H's or Tony Khan's. It's wrestling community. That's what we look forward to, because the road to WrestleMania, when it starts in about a month, which has already kind of started now a little bit, but once it starts in about a month or so, we're going to be glued to our television because WrestleMania is the payoff. And then after WrestleMania, we're looking for another payoff. Excuse me. It's a continuous thing. It's an organism that feeds itself. And I mean, I was not a big fan of them being sold, but I'm like, and this is with sports teams. When you have people that have played the sport, that know the sport, let them run the team. You just provide the backing, you provide what they need to make sure they're successful. You're the grocery store. Let them be the cooks.
That's one thing you asked me earlier about what has kind of opened my eyes about being in the wrestling business, is that there are things that happen behind the curtain that absolutely impact what happens in the ring or in storylines or in front of the camera.
Well, that was a nice way to bring her right back. So, because me and you I'm sure we could talk wrestling for forever. And if people have been listening, they're probably like, man, they're still talking about wrestling. We could go a lot longer. I have no doubt we could talk 100%. A lot longer. But we will bring it to a wrapping point. So, for people that are interested in following Wrestling for Christ, where can they find you all? How can they get in touch with you all?
Yeah, you know what? Probably the easiest way is on Facebook. We're on Facebook for Wrestling for Christ. Just do a search for that. You'll see our logo, which is a wrestling ring with the American flag and the Filipino flag merging together. And we have announcements of events on that page. You can send us a direct message if you're interested in having an event where Wrestling for Christ is featured, whether it be at your church or civic event, if you're doing a fundraiser, whatever the case may be. If you're an event planner and want to have something different, we bring the ring, we bring the wrestlers, we bring the sound crew. All we need is enough space to set it up, and you bring the crowd, and we'll entertain them, and then we'll share the gospel with them. And so there are a lot of shows. We'll do shows at schools. Of course, in a public school, we're a little limited to what we can share with everyone, but at the same time, we don't let that affect the standard of our product. And we're still going to put on a great wrestling show. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be family friendly. But it's a great way to raise money for school athletic departments. And we did one last year at a high school, and the wrestling coach wanted to be involved, and so he came. Listen, this is pro wrestling. This isn't like high school wrestling. Okay, I mean, he gave one of our guys a belly to belly suplex that I was like, ooh, That one had to hurt. And the kids just went nuts. They were going crazy. And because of course he did it to a bad guy, and so our guy's running his mouth about the school and about the coach and about the students, and the guy comes in and just delivers this belly to belly, so stiff, and it was great. It was great. The kids loved it, and we all had a good laugh about it. But we can absolutely have an incredible event for whatever purpose you're trying to raise money for, whatever cause. We love to share the gospel, and it doesn't matter if it's in a church or if it's at a civic or county event or a public event. Well, we're going to share the gospel unless in public schools we're a little limited, but beyond that, we're going to bring the word. If it's church and they want someone at their church to speak, absolutely. If you want one of our guys to give testimonies, we'd love to do that as well. Facebook's the best way to do it. Wrestling for Christ. Send us a direct message. And, we work with just about any budget. Again, all of the proceeds go towards our ability to go to the Philippines. We go every year. It's a 2-week trip. I believe we're planning to go in June of 2026, the first half of June. I'm hoping to be able to go to this one. But couldn't go to the one this year. My father was ill, and so I needed to stay in country. But excited about what's coming in 2026 for Wrestling for Christ.
Well, that's awesome. It's been more than a pleasure talking with you, Jody. Like I said, we could probably talk wrestling for a few more hours, and I'm sure at some point we will have to reconnect and we'll have to talk some more wrestling. But like we've talked about, it's not just being inside the four walls of the church. Sometimes it's being inside the squared circle. It's the four sides of a wrestling ring. Who knows where you can find God, find religion, find salvation? Who knows? But Jody, again, thank you for being a part of the podcast. I very much appreciate your time and your expertise, and just being able to talk wrestling with you.
Oh, Ryan, it was a blast, and yeah, we could go for another 3 or 4 hours, but I really appreciate the time we've had today.
Absolutely. So you've been listening to the Church with No Walls podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dearbone. As always, take care and be blessed.
Come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls. La 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 la, without walls.